King Baldwin, one of the greatest leaders in all of history, and of the most overlooked for many other great leaders. Fortunately, with social media, maybe his story can finally be recognized to the whole world how extraordinary he actually was. Traditionally, the Crusades would be looked at by historians as disturbing and Islamophobic. But over time, and with leaders like Baldwin having more attention, we're all starting to see a new perspective with a uniqueness where we look at more objective abilities than what's on the mainstream surface. Back to Baldwin though. He was done so many amazing things, and in this video we will be doing a multi-part series on the great leader of King Baldwin IV, otherwise known as the Leper King. In this part, we are discussing the childhood and growing up in this hostile situation. Real quick, I would really appreciate it if you liked and subscribed to the video. I work really hard on these. It just would really be amazing for me. And now, without further ado, back to the video. King Baldwin IV was born in the summer of 1161 AD. Born to a man named Amalric, a Count of Jafar, Amalric was married to Agnes of Courtenay. What established Amalric as important was the fact that he was a lord in the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Amalric's older brother, King Baldwin III, was in direct ties to owning Jerusalem, and though married, he didn't have any kids. Unfortunately, he would have had an unexpected death, leading Baldwin IV's father Amalric to be king of Jerusalem, a nation currently at war. Though small, it was massively important for religious, ideological, and strategic reasons. For context, the new Kingdom of Jerusalem was established around 6 decades earlier and was enforced by Frankish knights. The Frankish knights were Western knights who helped to establish these important regions. Some of these places that were controlled in this region were known as Acre, Tiberias, Arser, Jaffa, Ascalon, Gaza, Bethlehem, and of course, Jerusalem itself. What makes this also important in our story was the fact that Baldwin was Frankish, or French himself. It was also important to keep these places since it was the birthplace of Christ and where the Bible centers around, making this place very holy to the Christians. The problem was they were surrounded by enemies all around. You see, most of the Christian powers were very, very far away, and travel was still highly limited, especially with ships at this time. Consequently, it would make the land of Jerusalem highly vulnerable to invasions, especially coming from the ever-growing Muslim powers. Example, Seljuk Turks. This conflict between the Muslims and Christians are the greater wars we know as the Crusades. Baldwin IV would be officially deemed in the royal line at 2 and set to be king, although his mother would be separated to the noble court in fear of alienation from her family line, which was more ambitious than most for power. Back to Baldwin. He would grow up in these tough situations where the nation was at war and he seemed too powerless to change anything. Amalric wanted to give Baldwin a good education, and so he would assign William, the Archdeacon of Tyre, and one of the highest educated people in the kingdom, as the tutor of King Baldwin. From 6, he would go through intense learning to be as highly educated and capable as possible. Unfortunately, this was where the leprosy comes in. William would find out Baldwin had leprosy and would try to help him as much as they could. Though the leprosy had occurred, it was not noted of having any real or noticeable effects until his teenage years. He was noted as being an excellent horse rider, despite the disabilities that would occur to him later on in the future. A man named Abukir would teach the prince how to ride horses, which was seen as an essential skill by the Franks, as it was expected for leaders to have heavy armor and ready to march his men into battle. One of the most interesting skills were the knights' ability to be able to ride horses using their knees, as they would be using swords and shields. He would excel in horse riding, and For these last few years until 13, he would not have serious leprosy kick in. Sadly, everything would change in 1174 AD. Almeric would die unexpectedly, coming back from a campaign leading his army in Barnias. As he was making terms with the kingdom of Damascus and heading back, he was diagnosed with dysentery. By the time Almeric got back to Jerusalem, it was too late. On July 11th, he would have had his last breath, now with the fate up to King Baldwin. July 15th, 1174. He was now king, and with the high court, they would come together to see what the next thing they would need to do. This date would also mark the 75th anniversary of the Crusades, signifying how long this conflict truly was. From a quote from William, happy and rejoiceful for King Baldwin, quote, "He was comely of appearance for his age, and far beyond the custom of his forefathers. He was an excellent horseman, and understood the hand of horses. He had a very good memory, and loved conversation. He was economical, but always remembered both favors and injuries in every respect. He resembled his father not alone in his face, but in his entire mien. Even his walk and the tones of his voice were the same. His intelligence was keen, but his speech was somewhat halting, like his father. He eagerly listened to history and was well disposed to follow good advice." During his regency, his leprosy would grow worse and worse, but to conclude this, he would not back out from the saw. Though he was still suffering more and more as time went on, he had a duty for his country, and backing off at this time was not an option. The Leper King now arises. Thank you so much for watching this video. I worked really hard on this, and I'm just glad that you made it this far into the video. The next part 2 will be like somewhere mid-July, maybe late August. We'll have to see as things develop. I'm getting a really busy schedule, but I want to make music and I want to make like really cool videos for all of y'all. Hope you enjoy, and yeah, Bennett out.